Okay, so let's first start to know each other. I want to ask you how many developers are here. Raise hands. Okay. How many business marketing people? Yeah. Product managers? Yeah. Designers? UX designers? Okay. So as Pete already introduced me, my name is Primož. And previous to that, just a second. Okay. Well, I started as a print designer. After my high school, I got like an internship. Then I moved to web designer, then UX UI designer, then product designer. Now again UX designer. So as you might see, I'm guilty of all of those fashionable titles, and I might change it next year if something else is in there, hyped. So today we're gonna talk about design, usability, processes, business, and many other topics. I won't dive deep on any of those, quite the opposite. I wanna start a discussion. I wanna hear your thoughts. But even though I consider myself as a designer, we have some people that are designers here in our audience. Let's for today say that everybody here is a designer, because if you're building something and putting something in front of people, you're very likely to use already some design principles. But because this talk is titled Usability of Tangible and Intangible Products, we have to first consult our Bible, the Nielsen-Norman Group. How do we define usability? Well, it's a quality attribute that accesses how easy products are to use. And it's combined out of 5 quality attributes. That's learnability. That means how easy it is to use your design for the first time the users encounter that. Then efficiency. Once users have learned your design, how quickly can they perform the tasks? Then memorability. When users return to your design after a period of time, how quickly can they establish proficiency? Errors. How many errors do your users make? How severe are those errors? Once they make an error, how do they recover from that? And satisfaction, just how pleasing it is to use your designs. So, but if we want to build something useful, we have to talk about usability and utility combined. So we already talked about what it means to be that something, a product is usable, and utility means that there's something actually that you're solving a real pain, you're solving a need that people have. So it doesn't matter if you're building something that is super easy to use and nobody cares about it, because you're not solving anything, and vice versa, if you're building something that will solve a big problem but nobody can use it, both of those projects are essentially unuseful. If you look at the product definition, I don't want to talk a lot of go deep on this, but I believe if you can answer this simple formula, you pretty much have a product. So you're building something for your target customer, which has a unique need, and you are providing them with a key benefit, and unlike your competition, you're doing that and this better. So now that we sort of defined our product, let's look how we can make it a reality, how we can build it. So we have 2 processes. One is very long in the making, it's very hard to do, it's very costly and involves a lot of stakeholders. And the other one is fast, iterative, and what we also consider cheap. So both have their strengths and weaknesses. So if we start with the tangible product process, it usually starts with a good strategy, then well-defining the product, then along development, testing and iterations, then finally the production of the product, and then it comes in front of the user. And designers in this process have to put a lot of thought into human factors. There are desirability, business factor, viability, and technical factors, feasibility. So producing tangible product is a lot more expensive. That's why we usually put more thought into it, because the next iteration is going to be probably the next version, so we better make it right the first time. Okay, now with 3D printing and all out-of-the-box electronics, it gets cheaper, but it's still very expensive to do it. If you just imagine that the guy, the designer that made this chair, he had to put a lot of thought into where to get his material, how to produce it, how to ship it, how people are gonna assemble it, all of those things. And this is very costly, and probably didn't do it in a week. And then on the other hand, we have the intangible product process, which is, with the arrival with lean and agile, we were able to produce, deliver, and iterate fast on our products. And this is all fine and right, but we shouldn't do it at the stake of design. So what we usually do in intangible product process, we define the product, then we go into research. After that, we analyze our research, produce artifacts like user experience maps, personas. Then we choose what we're gonna design and build and develop. Then we put it in front of the users and do research again. And it's quite iterative, so everybody moves in the circles. It's not that streamlined. What happens a lot of time is that because we have, of course, limiting resources, time and money, we start to neglect research, prototyping, testing, and iterating on different features just for the sake of speed and getting something in front of the user as soon as possible. So here's an example of an intangible product. This is a service called Postmates, and because many believe that Agile is loose and it can adapt to your needs. I think we should turn it around and think of Agile as a process of high focus and high discipline. So what I'm suggesting is that we as designers should work on less features and investing all of our resources in those less features. And instead, what's happening a lot of time, we overthink on features and then we run out of resources, and some features aren't even research prototype like they should be. So, and if you're doing that, you essentially end up with a half-baked product that serves nobody really well. So what sounds better to you? If you imagine that the blue circles are features and you have the red circles are resources, so if you have like 10 plus features and you have to give them all the resources that you have, or if you could just focus on 3 features and build them really well. I mean, the answer is obvious. So if we can take the effort and resources that are used in the tangible product process and combine it with a fewer range of features in the intangible process, we might end up with a better solution. That means high discipline when we are defining the scope of the product, and that also involves a lot of research. Because like we said, if we want to build something useful, we have to have usability and utility combined. But of course, each product has its limited resources that could be used while building it, and this usually involves time and money, and designers are usually short on both. So what I'm suggesting is not to have a longer and more costly process of building intangible products. What I suggest is to have a more focused process and use the resources wisely at the features that we really research and the features that really matter. Every now and then I see this picture and everybody seems to like it very much. I think it's very wrong, because it implies that design and user experience have nothing to do with each other. I think this picture could be better corrected if we just put it like this. So if people would research, they will probably find out that this barrier that it made didn't stop nobody for crossing onto the street, and they probably didn't, and just put it out there, and stuff like this happened. So here's a story about every designer's dreams. I mean, it's storytelling with multimedia, because I was looking at my talk and I didn't have enough buzzwords, so I included storytelling and multimedia. And like I said, I think every designer's dreams are booking services. While designing booking services, a lot of things can go wrong. A lot of information has to be put in. A lot of errors can be made. So building a smooth and easy to use booking service is really, really hard. But let's say that you make it. You did your best. Everybody that starts the process can finish it. Your Google Analytics goal is close to 100%. I don't even know if Google Analytics allows 3-digit values in goals, but let's say you make it. So you can go home full of proud. You're available. You can call your mom and tell her that you didn't completely fuck up by becoming a designer. You just made a solution that brings your company or the organization you work with a lot of money, and you have proof. But then something strange happens. The guy just showed up, you know, the car is very drivable. The only time his shirt was white when he bought it, and he didn't shower for 2 days. So suddenly all of your hard work, all of your user experience work that you put into building this amazing booking service, it doesn't matter anymore, because he just clearly. So the people will all remember the bad things, even if you did it in a one click and the car shows up and it was like this, you know. Suddenly your work doesn't matter anymore. So, but all joke aside, when I was researching for this picture and I was typing in weird-looking taxi drivers, a lot of I found a lot of similar pictures, and that make me wonder why there are so good pictures about these people. And I shouldn't make fun of them, because there are real taxi drivers in New York City that make a calendar and they give it all to charity away. So please buy it and support. So by doing that, I just want to remember that your job doesn't end on the edge of your screen. So if we can sum here and say, you know, tangible design process has a long history, it's taking a lot of resources, but it usually benefits the end product. We can take some of those processes in consideration by building the intangible process. Because Agile aims to deliver software quickly, even though this might look at two different words at a time, I still think there are ways of fitting in quality design work. So by building better products doesn't end by putting more thoughtful design into Agile process. It involves much more. We should appreciate the big picture like we talked about right now. So design nowadays, I think, is present across multiple areas in our lives, and if you want to succeed, we have to start thinking about it in a broader sense and investing more time and more money into building useful products. So instead of just bringing the best of the tangible process into intangible, let's think further and try to make design present across all of our experience. And why we should make this? As soon as in 1973, then the CEO of IBM, Watson Jr., proclaimed that good design is good business. So, and many have copied this quote later on. So in today's competitive world, you just simply can't afford not to include design into your processes, because if you're not doing that, you're losing on audiences and money and probably some other stuff as well. So Airbnb, Uber, and even big corporations like Starbucks and Nike found it out that not more features, not more sales, but providing a deep and meaningful experience across all of their channels is really something that can and will differentiate them on the market. So Dieter Rams once told that his work was only possible because he was reporting directly to the chairman of the board. And design has to be insulated at a high level, otherwise you can just forget about it. And good design also involves great business thinking. And great business thinking is if you choose to invest in design. So if you don't believe me, here are a few examples. I think it started everything with Flextronic buying Frog Design in 2004. They were the makers of the first Macintosh. Then Facebook acquired Hot, another design studio. Then Square acquired 8020, another. Then Adobe bought Behance, the largest community for portfolios and creatives. Then Capital One acquired Adaptive Path, I think 1 year or this year. And if you still don't believe me, let's look at a few numbers. Those are the numbers from John Mida, the guy who is a partner, a major VC firm. So since 2010, 14 design agencies and 27 companies co-founded by designers were acquired by giants like Google, Facebook, and Adobe. 5 US-based startups co-founded by designers were raising a total sum of 2.75 billion, and 6 venture capital firms have started to inviting their designers into their teams. So the old solution to any problem was applying more technology, but by doing that we were searching for better experience. And if you have more CPU power, more memory, this doesn't cut it anymore. So what is this omnipresence of omnichannel user experience? So if you look at this experience, this is describes users who use different channels to engage with your product. Those channels could be mobile app, websites, call centers. It could also happen that users use multiple channels at the same time. For example, looking at a website and calling a call center. I don't know if anybody had problems with Amazon Web Services. I mean, if you have really a big problem, I had it. I don't want to talk about it, but my account was hacked in 4-digit numbers. So you probably could imagine what happened. And I was trying to call them, and you actually put in your phone number and you click on call, and they start to calling you, so you're instantly interacting by the phone and with the website with them. So, and this was, for me then, was a really great experience, and I really appreciated it, not calling a number that I didn't know and I didn't know how to put it in, and wait then in their line to get to an operator. They just called me, and we solved the problem. So it was, it really mattered to me. So the trick is really to put users in the center of your omnipresent design experience, that let them act on triggers, on motivators, regardless of the channel. So something to consider when you're doing this, you should really think about consistency. So users expect a consistent and meaningful experience across all of your product on every level that they interact with. I think what good example is, for example, Spotify. It looks pretty much the same on mobile apps, on web apps, on desktop apps. And if you just look at a player and the player there, I mean, if you're using the app, you pretty much, if we cover the branding, you pretty much will know which app is this about. But then another example, Kickstarter. I mean, when I first saw their app, I was actually thinking that this is some third-party app that they did with their APIs, because it doesn't, when you're exploring on Kickstarter, everything looks like this, white, and everything is in thumbnails. And here is, I think, a totally different experience. Those colors in the background change, and you don't understand why they change, and you're swiping back and forth. So I thought that it was something totally different, and I wouldn't expect it. Then another thing is availability. So it's really about offering a choice to your users when and how they will interact with your product. So users expect to be able to complete a desired task in the channel that they want to do it in. So if they can't perform a task, they usually switch to another channel, and switching channel is both time consuming and inconvenient. But in some cases, it just makes more sense. So a good example for this is Amazon. We are using Amazon a lot for examples. I mean, they've done something right. They're worth billions of dollars. So a good example is that you basically buy books online on Amazon.com and sync them to Kindle, and you most never buy books directly on the Kindle. So because Amazon.com is a way better experience that this e-ink, it probably makes more sense for you to go there and just buy a book and then let it download on your device. Another thing to consider is context optimization. So when you are building for your desired channel, you should be thinking about the technology limitations and all sort of other limitations of those channels. So for example, if you're building a mobile app for banking, I mean, looking at your balance is okay, instant transfer, pay a bill, deposit a check, everything is okay, because those are really, really simple tasks to perform. But if you want to have, rent a short-term loan with all the paperwork and all the stuff that you have to do, it's probably doesn't make sense to include it in the app, because there are still so many parts of this process that are by law so complicated, and you just have to think that this is probably something that we shouldn't build in the app because nobody will be able to use it. And one last thing is really seamless. Is users often don't complete the task just on one channel. They would like to pause that task and complete to another channel. So a good example for this is how Pocket app has done it. You have an extension for Chrome. You can start reading on your web browser and then continue to read on and finish on your mobile phone. So everything is in sync. You can pause your task and continue on some other device. So have in mind that users might interact with your product on multiple channels at the same time. Everybody knows probably this company. It was sold to Google by $3.2 billion. And they innovated in a market that wasn't exactly one of the hype ones, so it were thermostats. And when they did their packaging, if you look at their packaging, they understood that users that might come home with their $250 thermostat might hit a barrier because they don't have the tools to install those thermostats. So you come home, you just pay $250, you want to show up and test the thing, but you don't have the right tools to do it. So what they did is they put extra effort into building a screwdriver that could help people to install this device in their homes. I mean, this is probably something that cost them on a large scale $1 or $2, but it made a huge difference when you're opening the package and you can start right away. So something as small as a change in your privacy policy or a misplaced button or different colors can disrupt real people from using your products. I mean, I've done this deliberately because if you're using, somebody might think, what are you talking about? You're talking about usability and you're using, the smallest font that you have. But I want to show that even something as small as this that somebody can't read in the audience can ruin your experience of this talk for you. So, of course, I made it bigger. So think of this omnipresence of design in your experience in terms of any relationship in your life. We all know somebody that is always late to any meeting whatsoever, and even though you still can work with this person, you still you don't like oversee it or something like that, but it still affects and it shows a lack of appreciation to other people's time. So the same goes for experiences. Everything that could go wrong, delivering to wrong addresses, to billing errors, stuff like that, damage the user's trust in your company. And users might start to wonder if similar cause is not going behind your walls. I have one example because before I can invite Daniela to share some of her thoughts with us. I mean, Facebook in privacy policy, it's really a nightmare. At some point you could invite people to different groups even without their consent, so a lot of strange things happened. For example, you could invite somebody that was, I recently saw a case study that somebody that was like a really dumb idiot, white supremacist thing, was invited to some gay support group, and he was like exposed on his network for that, and he got all sorts of, like really people started treating him and tried to kill them and stuff like that, you know what I mean? So even something like this that is really a small change can have big impacts on people's life. And of course, people were pissed off at Facebook because why would anybody allow you that you can just invite people to your group and then this information gets exposed to everybody. So now I'll invite Daniela to share some of her thoughts with us.
Hi everyone. So Primož has asked me to come up and talk a little bit about future, summarize what he's talked so far, and also share a personal story, kind of a personal journey of Amazon, because you might find it interesting and it might raise more awareness around design. So what the focus tonight was of this talk, to think about user experience fully as a holistic experience, not just one channel, one thing. You might be designing one thing, but this is part of the bigger picture altogether. It could be including tangible and intangible, digital apps, service design, physical, tangible product that you're dealing with. And all of that is very important when thinking through the product that you're working on, which could be just this tiny product that's part of the bigger picture. And we need to change the way we think about it, and good, successful companies are doing this quite well. So for example, Airbnb, quite successful company, everybody knows what they do, what sort of business they're in. They're even thinking about changing processes and methodologies around acquiring information and doing research. So for example, they hired a Disney animator to go through the process of really digging deeper into user experience, and instead of just writing things in some spreadsheet, this animator did a storyboard on the whole experience, and through going through that process, they realized that there's a whole another product that they need to build around Airbnb, because traditionally when we're looking for hotels, they're usually centered in a center part of the town where transportation is working quite well. It's near all the places you need to go to. But if you're looking into Airbnb, things are quite different, because these houses, these places that you're booking could be all over the place. Now you want to know more about neighborhoods, you want to know more about transportation, convenience, all these different things that you were not normally looking so deeply into when you were booking hotels. So they changed the method around it, and we need to do more of that in the future. So I'd like to share a story about, how do I, my personal journey with Amazon. I figured I'm probably going to be a lot older than most of you in here. So how many of you know what Amazon was first all about? What sort of business they were in? Raise your hand. Yeah, they were really online bookshop. You would go. So back in the day, I used to read a lot. Not anymore. Gave up on books and knowledge. Just kidding. But I used to go to my favorite little bookshops in my neighborhood, and I would buy books. But then all these different online shops started popping up, and I liked that a lot. And because suddenly I didn't have to go drive 2 hours away to a special shop that had all these foreign authors that I liked, that were or rare titles or different types of translations that I was always looking for. So Amazon provided that. Suddenly you go online and you don't have to drive so far away, and you can find all these rare titles. And their delivery was really good, 7 to 14 days. I thought, that's perfect. I can sit and wait for this book to be delivered. Why I chose them next to a few others that happened at that time is because they really had a good checkout process, and they kind of enabled you to pay with credit card. They didn't make you switch channels. So that's one thing that Primož was talking about. You know, there are all these different channels. So you, on some of these online bookshops, you go there, you connect with the person that's selling a book, and now you had to take it offline and talk to them and figure out how the shipping method and everything else, where they made it seamless there, and it was great. But then what happened, because they were so good at this, they ended up shutting down a lot of little small bookshops, even some in my neighborhood. So I hated that about Amazon. So suddenly I went from loving Amazon to hating Amazon, because they robbed me from this experience of walking into the bookshop and flipping through books. Sometimes I would even sit there and read a couple of chapters to see if I want to buy this book. Because apparently a lot of people just didn't care for that experience. They just wanted to go online and do their shopping online. But interestingly enough, they won me back. And so years went by and they grew much bigger, and they got into all sorts of business. So suddenly you can buy electronics, you can buy food, you can buy clothing, shoes, anything under the sky you can buy on Amazon. And they made their process so easy. It was one click. You go, you put in your information initially, and then with one click you can buy anything you want, and it gets delivered to your door the next day, not 7 to 14 days. So suddenly the whole world went crazy over Amazon, and I was still boycotting them because they killed my book shopping experience. But then I had these 2 giant cats, and I had to buy litter for them quite frequently. And so what would happen is I either had to go buy smaller bags of litter frequently, or I had to go a couple of times a month to get a big bag that I couldn't carry into my apartment. So eventually I gave in, and I thought, it would be really nice with one click that I ordered this litter that gets delivered to my door. It costs the same as if I went to the store, and I didn't have to get someone to carry that for me, and I just gave in. So the whole idea is you really, again, thinking from the beginning to the end of this user experience, and where do you get people, even those that boycott you? And I'm sure they read a lot about, at the time I was living in the Bay Area, in San Francisco Bay Area, and people are very political and socially aware, and a lot of people had negative feelings about Amazon because they had bad reputation that they don't treat their workers that well. But whenever you're out having beer with friends, they all admit to you at some point that they use Amazon for that one thing. Here I use it for litter only, I swear, and someone is using it. But that shows a powerful company that has really understood their users, what they need. They understood the process behind, in terms of your online experience, delivery, if that's involved, and the quality of product, packaging. Does it get damaged in any way? Do you ever have problems with it or not? They really put a lot of thought behind that, and that's what makes them successful. So design, not just in terms of visual, let's apply good colors, but this holistic experience from the beginning to the end. So that's what I'd like to share with you.
So you see, she has way better stories and experience than I have, so that's why I was asking for help. So I'll just try to end this with a something that you can think about it, or we can discuss it together. So when we are developing empathy for our users, and we are trying to solve their needs, we should also develop empathy for the organizations that we work for or that we are building. Because let's face it, if you have put a business person in a room and you gave him a spreadsheet or Disney animated user journey, he will probably use a spreadsheet to make business decisions. So we should develop empathy from them as well. And by doing that, we might end up that some organizations might not be ready to start with this kind of thinking right away. So that doesn't mean that you have to do a bad job. You have to really study your channel that you are responsible for, and you have to provide a smooth off and off boarding from your channel to another channel, and you can really keep everything consistent when you are, even if you are alone in that process, think of a design as a whole experience. So when design doesn't have a proper place in organizations, I think that great products are almost impossible to build. So innovation usually starts with a raw technical breakthrough that needs mass adoption. And again, if you look at Amazon Web Services, those kind of utility can get you, started and scalable. So suddenly the best chance to make a breakthrough is really by doing good design. So and those things doesn't just happen in the tech industry; it happen in every major segment. So I want to finish up with a thought from John Mida. A few key points that he has pointed out, how he understands companies that get design and don't get design. I'm not saying that I agree with everything that is all those statements, because some might be controversial to somebody. But if you just look, you should start with design and not just end with it. That means that you shouldn't start with just building your product and then expect to spray designer on the end on it and think that you just built a great user experience. In a lot of companies it's still perceived like that. Second, let designers code and engineers design. That doesn't mean that we are switching jobs. That doesn't mean that we are combining jobs so nobody can get angry about it. What that means is that we understand each other to such level that we trust that even if there's no designer in the room and even if there's no engineer in the room, they can still make good choices about this. I mean, I work here at d.labs with a group of people that always point out my mistakes. So that's like having a team of designers, even though they are engineers. But if I did something wrong and something isn't the best way, and they figured out by building it, they always let me know, so to say. And the third thing is really, if you're applying good design, you shouldn't feel like a sellout by making money by this. So thank you for listening. If you have any thoughts, we can discuss. Any questions? Any examples?
I would just like to add that everybody is a designer, and I mean, designing is a very basic human activity. This is what separates us from the animals.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm not discussing academic design. I'm not discussing it as a business or stuff like that. This is design in modern times. But everything a human touches, it essentially turns into a tool or some kind of influence over the environment. And one of the best examples of this was how our grandmothers used to use the dough rollers, valjat.
Yeah.
Thanks for understanding. It always conformed to their hands, to their way of working, because some of them were more aggressive, some of them were more gentle, some of them used a stick, some of them used a flask. And all these tools sort of, little by little, acquired a bit of their identities. So design is a basic human activity, and with that I mean any input from any intelligent human is good input. From engineers, from users, from everybody who takes a detailed look at your product or service and gives concrete feedback. This is good. You should regard them as designers.
Yeah.
You know? So,
thank you.
that's it.
Yeah. So, thank you. Anybody else? No? Okay. So, if anybody would like to talk, you can talk to Daniela or to me and get to know us. We have one more team member that is sick, unfortunately, but I think from our team everybody was sick.